Hello, and I'd like to talk to you about Aspergers Syndrome. It is related to autism, and Hans Asperger was the person that discovered that out of a lot of autistic boys, and it was boys at the time, that he'd seen, some of them actually wanted to interact, but couldn't, because they couldn't get the social cues. Someone with AS can sometimes not be able to make eye contact, just like an autistic person. And within the realms of fiction, such as Oliver Twist and that, the person that can't make eye contact is always the person that's a bad guy, person not to trust or whatever, you know. And you think, hey up, you know, I'm not going to trust that person, he didn't look at me. Look at me, you know, like the teachers said at school, you know, oi Stephen, look at me. Do you know what I mean? I once was grabbed round the throat by a teacher when I was 12 years old, and it was simply because I wouldn't look at him and he thought I was being obnoxious, so he grabbed me round the throat and said, now you'll look at me, son. So there you go. In the 70s things were a lot different, and the police just let the teachers get away with what they wanted to. If the teachers did half of what they did then as they do now, they'd all be in prison. Now, I started a group called Aspergers World 3, and it went from 2001 to 2008. Unfortunately, it was taken down by some malicious hacker. All I can say is they did me a favour, because it really woke me up, because I hadn't really taken much interest in the group for some time. Now, if you got someone with AS, you'll find that the experts, the so-called experts, will tell you that that person's going to be like that for the rest of their life. They've obviously got a crystal ball, because the fact of the matter is they said I wouldn't be able to read, write, or do anything, or ever have a relationship, and the truth is, but they were wrong. You know, I can read very, very well, I can write very imaginatively, and I have been in relationships, my last one being, because I'm with someone now, but my previous one, actually married to her for 6 years, and 9 years living with her. So 3 years I was with her, and then we got, then we got married. I've met a number of people off the internet. I've told them about my AS beforehand. I've had people say, well, you look normal to me. Of course I do. What's normal? You know, normal is a flipping setting on a spin dryer. You know, that's what normal is. It's not anything, that's defined. It's not defined. It's defined by people. For instance, someone into tarot cards to a pagan is normal. To a devout Christian that doesn't think anything of, hates tarot cards and that, it's abnormal. Oh my God, they're into the devil's worship in there. So, you know what I mean? I'm not classic AS. Classic AS is like Data or Spock. You ever watch Star Trek? Spock, affirmative captain or whatever. And Data, the way he's just emotionless, is more like AS. I was more like it as a child. I got bullied because I went into mainstream, and I ended up walking around the perimeter of the school. And that was it, really. And because I used to get stressed, I used to spin around in the playground, spin around and things like that. And then there was this kid that chased me, and I had enough, so I punched him. And I was only a little child, but I just didn't see the point of being chased by this lad all the time. He was a real obnoxious lad. And his name was, well, all I can say his name was Jonathan, and I'm not going to say the last name but basically, I was the one that got the blame anyway. But the thing that really did it was when I tickled the boy's feet in the nativity play, and it was a Catholic school, and that did it. I mean, my parents cringed at the time, and I really would have cringed myself. It was a traumatic time. I mean, I let the budgie out of the cage, which was in the classroom, and I ended up putting a bucket on my head because I just didn't want to be in school, and I couldn't understand why I had to go. A teacher slapped me around the face at play school. Again, something that wouldn't happen now. And my mum had a right go at it and ended up getting banned from play school. These were all like things that just went on, you know, and Mum never got any help. The so-called experts kept me for 2 weeks and they said, you know, Mrs. G, you know, there's nothing wrong with your son, you know, nothing wrong with your son. I'm afraid that there's nothing we can do. So that went on, and my mum eventually said, well, keep him another, I think it was my dad actually, keep him another few weeks. And of course I broke, and then they said, you were right and we were wrong. At the clinic, which was called the Charles Burns Clinic, putting down was rife. I saw somebody thrown up in the air and his head hit the floor. I was locked up in one of them wooden vault horses by one of the teachers, and if you misbehaved even slightly, they used to drag you off to what was called an isolation room, where they used to pin you down, which was literally sit on top of you until you calmed down. Women and men would do that, and I don't really call it sexual abuse or whatever, but I call it physical and mental abuse, especially as one of the women said, if I'd have been hers, she'd have aborted me. So that isn't very nice to say to a child that's about 6 or something, is it? I went to special school, and then from special school, because I was seen by a psychiatrist or psychologist, Mrs. Barker, I went back to mainstream because she suggested that there was nothing wrong with me apart from a few behavioural problems, but academically and that I'd be alright. So I went back to mainstream. Of course, they announced in assembly, I'm the child from, you know, the special school, and then I get beaten up. I can remember getting beaten up on my 12th birthday, and Uncle Gray was outside, and he saw it happening, and, you know, couldn't do anything about it, but the lads were like, so he just said, oi, and they shifted, and, you know, he said, why didn't you hit them? I said, there was too many of them, Uncle. He said, well, you know, you should have hit them, because Uncle Gray's always been somebody who's, you know, like, stand up for yourself, son, you know. After that, my mum negotiated with the school to get me out early from school, so I could at least have a 5-minute head start. That's how bad it was. It was called the bullying school anyway, because all the rough nuts went there. So why didn't the teachers help me? You've got to be kidding, haven't you? The teachers in those days, they used to watch you hit each other. And there was no IEPs, there was no mollycoddling, there was no social worker, there was nobody to help Mum through the bad times, there was nothing. My mum ended up on Valium, and she was also on high blood pressure tablets around my age, and beta blockers.